detachment. You ever notice how the mind replays certain people like a favorite song you didn't choose to put on repeat? You wake up and their face shows up in your thoughts before you even realize it. You're brushing your teeth and suddenly remembering a random laugh, a scent, a conversation that ended months or years ago. You go through your day pretending you've moved on, but deep down you know, they never really left your head. And it's not because you're weak, it's not because you're obsessed. It's because your mind is trying to finish a story that never found its ending. The brain doesn't like open loops. It's built to solve problems, to find closure, to make sense of chaos. And when something emotionally powerful happens, a breakup, betrayal, rejection, or even deep connection, your brain attaches meaning to it. It creates an emotional loop, a circuit that won't stop spinning until it feels resolved. That's why you keep replaying the same moment, the same message, the same memory. Not because you enjoy it, but because your brain keeps saying, "What happened? Why did that end? What did I do wrong? What does this mean?" It's like watching a movie that froze right before the ending. You're stuck in that frame, waiting for the credits to roll. When someone is always on your mind, what you're actually remembering isn't the person. It's the emotion attached to them. Every time your mind replays their name, it's not saying, "I miss them." It's saying, "I still don't understand why this matters so much." And that's where the trap begins. Because instead of letting yourself feel and understand that emotion, you fight it. You distract yourself with noise, social media, work, friends, anything that keeps you from listening to what your mind is trying to tell you. But the more you ignore it, the louder it gets. Think of it like your favorite song. You hum it unconsciously, not because you love every lyric, but because it carries a rhythm that connects to a feeling inside you. That's how emotional memories work. The mind keeps playing them back until you recognize the lesson within them. It's not trying to punish you, it's trying to teach you. The problem is, most people confuse reflection with weakness. They say, "Why am I still thinking about this person? I should be over it by now." But healing doesn't have a timer. The mind doesn't move on just because the calendar did. It moves on when it understands. Let me tell you something powerful. The reason you think about them so often isn't because they're special. It's because that moment between you and them awakened something in you. Maybe it's a wound that was never healed. Maybe it's a truth you never faced. Or maybe it's love you never gave yourself. The mind replays what the heart refuses to feel. So when those memories come up again and again, don't run from them. Sit with them. Ask your mind, what are you showing me? What am I not seeing? Because until you do, the replay will continue. Sometimes the most haunting thoughts aren't about missing a person. They're about missing a version of yourself that existed when they were around. Your mind might not even be clinging to them. It's clinging to you. The you that felt seen, that felt alive, that felt connected. That's what your brain keeps trying to revisit. And that's why moving on feels impossible. Because you're not just letting go of them, you're letting go of who you were with them. And here's the truth most people don't tell you. Healing is not about forgetting, it's about integrating. The goal isn't to erase the memory, it's to understand it so deeply that it no longer controls you. The mind keeps bringing someone up because there's unfinished emotional business. Maybe it's forgiveness you never gave. Maybe it's gratitude you never expressed. Or maybe it's simply time to accept that you can't rewrite what already happened. But until you confront that loop, it will keep spinning. Every text you reread, every picture you avoid deleting, every dream that sneaks up in the middle of the night, all of it is your mind's way of saying, "We're not done yet." Not with them, but with this story. Because closure doesn't come from the person who hurt you. It comes from you deciding that you've learned everything that memory had to teach. Your thoughts aren't trying to break you, they're trying to free you. But first, they need you to listen. And that's why they keep playing that same person, that same scene, over and over again, not to torment you, but to make sure you don't walk away before understanding what it meant. You know that strange feeling when a song plays and instantly your chest tightens? Not because of the lyrics, but because of who you used to be when you first heard it? That's what emotional echoes feel like. They're the invisible waves that move through your mind long after someone is gone. They show up when you least expect them, in a random smell, a passing word, a street corner that reminds you of a moment you swore you'd forgotten, and suddenly they're there again. Not physically, but emotionally. The memory feels alive, like it just happened yesterday. That's not madness. That's memory, layered with emotion that never got processed. Every person who's ever mattered to you leaves behind an emotional fingerprint. It's more than just a memory. It's energy stored in your nervous system, your body, your subconscious. When you connected with that person, your emotions got tied to their presence. You built emotional patterns around them: comfort, excitement, safety, maybe even pain. And when they left, those patterns didn't vanish. They remained like echoes bouncing around the walls of your mind. You can't see them, but you can feel them. You might wake up one morning thinking you're completely fine, you've moved on, everything's healed. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, their name pops into your head and your heart feels that old pull again. It's not that you still want them back, it's that your emotional body hasn't fully caught up with your rational mind. Logic says, it's over, but your emotions say, wait, we still feel this. And until those two align, the echoes keep repeating. You see, emotions don't disappear, they transform. When you suppress them, they sink deeper, like stones at the bottom of a river. They don't dissolve, they wait. And the moment something in your present life touches that same emotional frequency, a voice tone, a scent, a phrase, those stones rise to the surface. That's why a random stranger's laugh can remind you of someone from years ago. That's why a dream can make you feel something real about someone you haven't seen in ages. It's not nostalgia, it's an echo returning for acknowledgement. Most people try to silence these echoes. They distract themselves, they overwork, they chase new relationships, thinking new noise will drown out the old sound. But emotions don't vanish because you ignore them. They grow louder. The echo only fades when it's heard. That's why healing requires stillness. You can't escape your feelings by running faster. You have to stop, listen, and understand what the echo is trying to say. Sometimes, that echo is love that never had the chance to speak its full sentence. Sometimes it's grief that was rushed. Sometimes it's guilt you've carried quietly for too long. And sometimes it's simply a reminder of how deeply you can feel, proof that you were fully alive once, even if it ended painfully. Those echoes don't mean you're stuck, they mean you're human. They mean you experienced something powerful enough to leave a vibration behind. What's important to realize is that these echoes aren't calling you back to the past. They're calling you to finish what the past began. Emotional understanding. You can't heal what you refuse to feel. You can't silence what you pretend not to hear. So when the thought of someone comes rushing back unexpectedly, instead of asking, why now? Try asking, what is this feeling trying to teach me? That question changes everything, because the echo only exists to deliver a message. Once the message is received, it naturally fades. Think of your emotions like sound waves. When sound hits a surface and there's no space for it to be absorbed, it bounces back. That's what happens when you resist your feelings. They keep bouncing around your mind. But when you open up space through awareness, reflection, and acceptance, the sound gets absorbed, the echo softens. That's emotional healing in its simplest form. So when someone is always on your mind, it's often not them you're feeling. It's the echo of the emotions they left behind. And those emotions will keep calling until you give them the attention they need. They'll whisper through memories, they'll speak through dreams, they'll hum quietly in the background of your thoughts. They're not there to haunt you. They're there to be heard, understood, and released. We've all said it. I just need closure. It sounds like the finish line, doesn't it? That one final conversation, that perfect explanation. That moment where everything finally makes sense and the pain just stops. But here's the truth most people never realize. Closure isn't something someone gives you. It's something you create for yourself. And the reason someone stays on your mind long after they're gone is because deep down, you're still waiting for that one moment. The apology, the understanding, the emotional handshake that tells you, okay, now I can let go. But most of the time, that moment never comes. You replay conversations in your head, trying to rewrite the ending. You imagine what you would say if you could just talk to them one more time. You think if they could just explain why they did what they did, you'd finally be free. But that's the trap. That's the illusion of closure. Because even if they did come back and say every single thing you wanted to hear, it wouldn't heal what's inside you. The words you think you need from them are really words you've been needing to say to yourself. The illusion of closure is powerful because it gives us hope. It tricks us into believing that healing is external, that it depends on someone else's honesty or regret. But what if that person never apologizes? What if they don't even see what they did wrong? What if they moved on like nothing happened while you're still stuck in the wreckage of something that mattered to you? That's where most people stay, trapped in a waiting room for a conversation that will never happen. You check your phone, not expecting a text, but still hoping for one. You see their name somewhere and your stomach drops because for a moment, you think, maybe this is it. Maybe they're finally ready to explain. But they don't. And the silence becomes heavier than any words could be. That silence is where the illusion lies, the belief that they owe you the peace you deserve. But peace isn't a debt, it's a decision. Your mind replays what it doesn't understand, so it keeps showing you images of them, moments that ended abruptly, words that cut deep. You keep thinking, if I could just make sense of this, I could move on. But closure doesn't come from understanding why they did what they did. It comes from accepting that you might never know. That's the hardest part, letting go of the need to know. Sometimes you won't get the truth. Sometimes the person who hurt you won't admit it. Sometimes they'll rewrite the story to make themselves look innocent. and you'll never get that moment where justice feels served. But even then, you have a choice: stay in the waiting room or walk out on your own. Because real closure isn't about finishing a story, it's about realizing that the story doesn't need to keep being told. It's strange, isn't it? We want the person who broke our peace to be the one who gives it back. But that's like asking the storm to clean up the mess it made. They can't fix what they shattered because their role in your story was to teach, not to repair. Closure begins when you stop expecting them to carry your healing. Maybe they ghosted you. Maybe they lied. Maybe they simply walked away without an explanation. Whatever it was, you deserved better. But that doesn't mean you need them to validate that truth. You already know it. You already feel it. You already have the wisdom that comes from it. And that's what closure truly is. The moment you decide that peace matters more than answers. When you think about someone over and over again, it's not because you can't forget them. It's because you're still holding out for a sense of fairness that life didn't give you. But fairness isn't a guarantee. Life isn't symmetrical like that. Sometimes you have to write your own ending. Sometimes closure looks like you saying out loud, "It happened. It hurt, but I'm done carrying it." The illusion of closure fades when you realize that no apology, no message, no final meeting could ever give you back what you lost. What you truly wanted wasn't their words. It was inner peace, clarity, and self-respect. And those are things only you can give yourself. When someone is always on your mind, it's easy to assume it's because you still love them, still miss them, or still want them back. But the truth runs deeper than that. What you're really feeling isn't always about the person. It's about the attachment your mind built around them. The connection you had wasn't just emotional, it was neurological. Your brain wired itself to their presence. Every text, every touch, every laugh became a small dose of emotional security. They became your routine, your comfort, your sense of balance. And when they left, your brain didn't just lose a person. It lost its pattern. Attachment is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. From childhood, we're wired to seek it. A baby cries for its mother not just because it's hungry, but because the presence of that caregiver means safety. As adults, we recreate that same dynamic in relationships, not out of dependency, but out of instinct. When someone becomes part of your daily emotional rhythm, your nervous system learns to regulate around them. They become your calm. Your body learns their voice, their energy, their timing. That's why when they're suddenly gone, it's not just heartbreak you feel, it's withdrawal. Your mind and body begin craving that emotional rhythm like it craves air. You wake up in the morning expecting a message that doesn't come. You reach for your phone out of habit, scroll to their name, and stop yourself. Not because you forgot, but because your attachment still remembers. That's the thing about attachment. It doesn't dissolve when the relationship ends. It lingers, searching for what it lost. This is why letting go feels so impossible. Because you're not just letting go of a person, you're letting go of a pattern that once made you feel safe. And your brain doesn't want to lose safety. So it resists, it creates intrusive thoughts. It replays memories. It makes you believe you're missing them, when what you're actually missing is the version of yourself that existed in their presence. The version that felt seen, understood, needed. Attachment builds identity. You start to think in terms of we instead of me. You adjust your choices around them, where you go, what you do, even how you see yourself. And then one day that we becomes I again, and you don't just lose the person, you lose a part of your identity. That's why it hurts so deeply. It feels like you've lost yourself in the process. But what's really happening is your mind trying to rewire that identity back to independence. Think about this: when you first fall for someone, your brain releases dopamine and oxytocin, the same chemicals tied to reward and bonding. Those chemicals literally condition your body to crave their presence. You feel high when they're around and hollow when they're not. That's not weakness, that's biology. So when they leave, your body doesn't instantly switch off those chemicals. It continues to search for that high, and that search becomes the constant thought of them. You're not obsessed, you're detoxing, and detox hurts, it confuses you. It makes you believe you can't live without them. But what you can't live without is the emotional stability they represented. It's like tearing down a wall that once held up your home. Suddenly everything feels unstable. But here's the thing: the mind only builds attachments to what it finds meaningful. That means your attachment isn't proof of weakness, it's proof of how deeply you're capable of connecting. The reason someone stays on your mind for so long isn't because they were irreplaceable, it's because the bond was. Bonds don't break cleanly. They stretch. They linger. They hum quietly in the background of your thoughts long after the music has stopped. But those thoughts are just echoes of attachment trying to find new ground to root itself in. Eventually, your mind learns to redirect that energy, not toward them, but toward yourself. But before it does, it has to go through the phase of remembering, revisiting, replaying. When you find yourself thinking, why can't I stop missing them? What you're really saying is, my mind hasn't found a new pattern yet. The person isn't the addiction, the attachment is. You're addicted to the way your emotions used to feel when they were around. And that's okay, it's human. But the healing begins when you start building new emotional rhythms that don't rely on their presence. It's not about erasing them. It's about teaching your brain that you can feel safe again without them. That you can build peace from within, without needing someone else to hold it for you. That's the real work of detaching, not forgetting the bond, but learning to survive without depending on it. Because attachment doesn't mean weakness. It means you care deeply. But now it's time to take that same depth, that same capacity, and attach it to your own healing. Sometimes the reason someone won't leave your mind isn't because of who they are, it's because of what they reflected back to you. They showed you something about yourself that you couldn't see until you met them. And that reflection, once seen, can't be unseen. That's why even after they're gone, your thoughts keep circling around them. They became a mirror, not a magnet. You're not drawn to them because they're special. You're drawn to the version of you that you discovered when you were with them. Every meaningful relationship, whether romantic, friendly, or fleeting, reveals something hidden. Sometimes it's beauty, sometimes it's pain, sometimes it's your capacity to love, to forgive, to feel alive. And sometimes it's the wounds you've been avoiding for years. That's why certain people impact you so deeply, even if they were only in your life for a short time. They weren't just part of your story. They were a reflection of something buried within you, waiting to be understood. Think about it. Have you ever met someone who instantly felt familiar, even though you barely knew them? That's not coincidence. That's resonance. They carry energy, patterns, and behaviors that match something inside you. It might be comfort. It might be chaos. But your mind recognizes it. You're drawn to it because it feels like home, even if that home isn't always safe. That's how the mirror effect works. People reflect your emotional truths, both the ones you celebrate and the ones you suppress. The person who made you feel unworthy didn't create your insecurity. They revealed it. The one who didn't value you didn't cause your self-doubt. They mirrored the part of you that still questioned your own worth. The one who made you feel alive didn't give you life. They awakened the part of you that had been asleep. That's why you can't stop thinking about them. It's not them you're chasing, it's the self-awareness they triggered. This is why relationships can feel like emotional earthquakes. They shake loose everything you've been hiding. Suddenly, you see your fears, your patterns, your need for validation, your fear of being unseen. You see the parts of yourself that you didn't even know were there. And when the person leaves, you're left staring into that mirror with no one else to hold it up for you. That's why your mind keeps bringing them back, because the reflection they left behind is unfinished. You start wondering, why did they leave? Why can't I forget them? But what your mind is really asking is, what did they show me that I'm still afraid to face? The thoughts that replay in your head aren't just memories, they're invitations. Invitations to heal, to grow, to understand. You think you're obsessing over them, but what you're really doing is processing yourself through the lens of that connection. They were the catalyst. The reaction is happening inside you, and that's where the power of awareness comes in. Once you realize that they were just a mirror, you stop chasing the reflection and start focusing on the person being reflected. You stop asking, why did they treat me that way? And start asking, why did I accept it? You stop asking, why did they make me feel so alive? And start realizing, I was capable of that feeling all along. The mirror doesn't give you anything you don't already have. It only reveals what's been there the entire time. Sometimes, the most painful relationships are the ones that teach you the most about yourself. They show you the difference between attention and affection, between comfort and connection, between love and attachment. They teach you where you still need to grow, where you still need boundaries, and where you still confuse being chosen with being valued. You might hate them for what they did or miss them for how they made you feel, but either way, they woke you up. That's why letting go feels so complicated. You're not just releasing a person, you're releasing a reflection of who you were when you were with them. It feels like losing a piece of yourself because, in a way, it is, but it's a piece you've outgrown. The mirror served its purpose. It showed you the truth. And now, your mind is trying to integrate that truth into who you are becoming. The people who leave the deepest marks on you are often the ones who reveal the most about your soul. They show you your light, your shadow, your strength, and your weakness. They teach you where your love flows freely and where it gets stuck. They don't come into your life by accident. They come when you're ready to face something real. That's why you can't forget them, because they were never just another person. They were a reflection of your inner world, a glimpse into your own depth, and a reminder of everything you still have to discover within yourself. There comes a point when thinking about someone stops feeling nostalgic and starts feeling exhausting. You wake up and they're the first thought that crosses your mind, uninvited. You go through your day trying to stay busy, but every quiet moment feels like a doorway they walk through. You tell yourself you're over it, but a song, a word, a memory drags you right back. It feels like they own real estate in your head, like your peace is on lease and they're still collecting the rent. But here's the truth. They don't live there anymore. You've just forgotten to change the locks. Reclaiming your mental space isn't about forcing yourself to forget someone. It's about taking back control of your thoughts, deciding what stays and what doesn't. The mind loves to wander back to the familiar, even if the familiar hurts. It craves what it knows. That's why the same person, the same story, the same questions keep looping. It's not because you're stuck, it's because your mind is searching for closure, comfort, or control. But peace doesn't come from rethinking what happened. It comes from choosing what deserves your attention now. Every thought you entertain builds a pathway in your brain. The more you travel it, the easier it becomes to go there again. That's how habits are formed, and that includes emotional ones. Thinking about someone over and over again becomes an emotional habit, not a reflection of love or longing, but of repetition. Your brain says, this is familiar, so it must be important. But familiarity isn't importance. It's just comfort disguised as connection. So how do you reclaim that space? It starts with awareness. Every time their name shows up in your head, instead of getting frustrated or ashamed, just notice it. Don't fight it. Don't feed it, just acknowledge it. Say to yourself, there you are again, because fighting thoughts gives them power. Ignoring them makes them louder, but awareness disarms them. When you stop reacting, the thought loses its charge. Then comes redirection. You don't erase a thought by force. You replace it with focus. Every time your mind drifts to them, gently guide it back to the present. Ask yourself, what can I give my energy to right now that brings me peace instead of pain? It could be a project, a goal, a conversation, a moment of stillness. It's not about distraction, it's about redirection. You're teaching your brain a new pattern, one where you choose what stays. Your mental space is sacred. It's not a storage room for people who left, it's the foundation of your emotional health. And when you constantly fill it with memories of someone who's no longer there, you leave no room for new growth. You can't build a new story in a space that's still cluttered with old chapters. Let the thoughts come, but don't invite them to stay. They're passing through, not moving back in. And maybe that's the hardest part, realizing that healing isn't about deleting memories, it's about changing your relationship with them. It's learning to think about them without feeling pain, to remember without reliving. That's the moment you know you've reclaimed your space. Because peace doesn't mean silence, it means harmony. It means their memory no longer fights for your attention, it simply exists without power over you. You see, every time you think of them, you have two choices: spiral or observe. You can either fall back into the loop of why they left, why you cared, why it still hurts, or you can step back and say, this thought is just a trace of the past. That single shift from identification to observation is the beginning of freedom. Because the thought may come, but it doesn't define you anymore. The truth is, the mind can't stop thinking. It's what it does. But you can choose which thoughts get to stay. You can build new patterns that make peace feel familiar again. You can fill your space with purpose, gratitude, and self-understanding, things that expand you instead of drain you. The person who once took up your mental energy was part of your growth. But growth means outgrowing. And reclaiming your mind means telling yourself, this space belongs to me again. Because every time you choose not to chase a memory, every time you breathe instead of overthink, every time you redirect instead of replay, you take back a little more control, you rewrite a little more of your story. You turn the noise of their absence into the sound of your own peace returning. When someone is always on your mind, it feels like they hold a piece of you, your attention, your peace, your energy. But the truth is, they only have what you continue to give. The mind is powerful, but it's also loyal to habit. It clings to what it remembers, even when it hurts. And that's why healing isn't about forgetting someone. It's about retraining your focus, reclaiming your emotional energy, and choosing where your thoughts get to live. You think about them because they mattered, because at one point they were part of your story. But not everyone who enters your life is meant to stay. Some people are lessons wrapped in emotion, meant to show you what love feels like, what pain can teach you, and what strength looks like when you finally decide to move forward. The person who's on your mind may never know how much space they've taken up in your thoughts. But you do. And that's why the real work isn't about them anymore. It's about you. It's about closing the chapter with grace, not resentment. It's about realizing that your peace doesn't depend on their presence or their apology. It depends on your decision to let go. When you start focusing on your growth, your healing, your peace, something shifts. Their memory stops feeling like a weight and starts becoming a whisper. The grip loosens. The thoughts come less often. You stop asking why and start saying thank you. Not for what they did, but for what the experience taught you. Because every person who leaves creates space for something new, a better version of you, a deeper sense of self, a quieter kind of strength. So if someone's always on your mind, Take it as a reminder, not of what you lost, but of what you're ready to reclaim. You are not your thoughts. You are not your past. You are the awareness choosing what comes next. And when you finally decide to guard your peace the way you once guarded that connection, you'll realize something powerful. They no longer live in your head. They live in your history. And your mind, it's finally yours again.